You mentioned to me that you have synesthesia.
Yes.
Do you feel like that also impacts your relationship with colour a little bit?
Synesthesia for me is with heightened emotion.
Oh,
I see coloured
Gosh.
patterns. So actually not having colour in my work is very calming.
Welcome back to Artfully Crafted. My name is Alienor, and each week I travel to a craft person's studio, interview them and show you their work. This week we're headed to Cornwall to meet with print artist Lou Tonkin. As with many of the artists who I interview on Artfully Crafted, I first came across Lou's work on Instagram. I really loved the sort of movement and the expressiveness that really comes across in her work. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button and let's get into it. Hi Lou.
Hi.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. We're in your lovely studio in Falmouth, and I feel like I'm hugged by all of your artwork. It's kind of surrounding us.
It is everywhere.
Yeah, it's really great. Please introduce what you do.
I'm a printmaker, and I work exclusively with lino cut prints, which are all single colour prints, which I sometimes hand colour.
Yes, we could go into the process of how that works.
First of all, I walk. Walking always comes first, and that's where the inspiration is for me, out with the hedgerows and the birds and the fields. And then I go back and draw, and sometimes I draw in my sketchbook for ideas, or sometimes when I'm out walking I get a fully formed idea that's there. I've seen a bird in a hedgerow and it's like the perfect vignette, and I just need to go back and transfer it onto a block, which I do with either pencil or a ballpoint pen because it stays. And then I start to carve it out with tools, which I've got here.
Yeah.
And I draw it very loosely, so it gives me a rough idea of the composition, but I change the design as I'm going, so it becomes more fluid, so you can feel like the movement of, you know, the wind that day, or the bird, or whether it's, you know, taking off from a hedgerow or plant, or, you know, sitting and cooling, so you can get the feel of how that works. And then I carve the block out fully, which means taking away the surface that we don't want and leaving the top line that we do want. And then
This is kind of reversing
it's
everything.
a reverse. Yeah, well, it's a nicely mindful process that you're removing the negative space to leave the positive. So if you're looking at an arm, you're cutting this bit out and leaving the arm there.
Okay.
And then you roll ink over the top, and I use a really lovely linseed based ink, which is all vegetable pigments, so it feels kind to the planet and everything else, and it's vegan based. It just feels like a wholesome material to be using. And then I print it onto, it's a Japanese grass paper, which it's quite lightweight, but it feels like you have a really good contact with the block when you're printing. So it feels like you're in touch with the image the whole way through. It's very personal, from the heart process.
How different is the process when you're using one colour versus multiple colours?
Well, if you're doing multiple colours, you can either do it as a reduction print, where you keep removing some of the block as you're working. So you do a print and then you take some more out and do another colour, and keep doing that until you get to your final image. Or you can use multiple blocks for different colours.
So if you're doing the first method, you sort of have to decide how many prints you want before you get started.
So you have it as a limited edition.
Okay.
And that is the amount of prints you have, because you can't go back. Once you've taken it out, that's it.
Whereas then with the multiple blocks, that must be harder in terms of the carving, to make sure that everything sort of fits.
Well, you have to register it so that the blocks fit together. having said that, I always like it if it's slightly off. It gives it more character, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I think my favourite way to do it is to do a single colour print, which I enjoy the most. For me, it gives me a better sense of movement. And then to hand colour it, I found some really lovely watercolour paints, which are earth pigment paints, which feels good. Feels like a good way to introduce colour.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think when you were showing me your sketchbook, you're saying that, that your drawings aren't like too detailed, but your sketchbook, I feel like there's a lot of detail in there.
Yeah.
And then you're saying, I go for kind of, one colour. But again, in your sketchbook, I found examples where it's like, it's really colourful, right?
It's really mood-based. As an artist, it's all a communication of who you are. So a lot of it is mood-based, or, if I'm out sketching, it's, the colours that are there at that time. Whereas the print process, it takes some of that away, which I actually like that part of the process. I find it quite calming. Whereas when I'm drawing, it's nice to work with the colour.
Okay. So the cutting is the part that you find kind of...
Yeah, it's wonderful. I'm able to completely immerse myself in just cutting and not think about anything else at all for the entire time that I'm doing it. And I can sit for hours and hours and hours. And lots of people say to me, gosh, you must be very patient to do that work. But it's not at all patience. It's more an inability to stop. It feels like there's this energy when I'm working that I just have to do it. And then once it's sort of poured out, it's there.
You kind of mentioned to me that you feel like part of who you are has influenced the kind of art that you do and the way you run your business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very much part of who I am. I have known for years that I'm dyslexic, so that makes a lot of life more difficult. But in terms of this work, it makes it a lot easier. I've taught a lot of workshops over the years, and I know how difficult people find to work in reverse. So when you're doing a print, because of the nature of printing it onto paper, it's in reverse to the way you've carved it.
So you're already doing the negative instead of the positive, and then you're also reversing.
And then you're reversing it as well. So I think that's quite a difficult way to think. Whereas if you look at it from the mind of someone who's dyslexic, someone who can easily write backwards, whether they want to or not, often by mistake writing backwards. That means if you're looking at the image in your mind, it doesn't have to go in a linear way. I look at it in my head much more like the way you see an architect's drawing on a computer, that you can turn it around in your mind. That's how I see the image when I'm working on it. Even though you're printing it as a two-dimensional image, it's still very much three-dimensional for me until it goes onto the paper.
There's something that I love. I remember when I first came across your work on Instagram, and there's that line at the top of your Instagram that says that your shop opens on the 1st of every month and closes when your order book is full. And there was just something about it that just, I don't know why, I kind of loved that. Where it was like, oh, that feels very like, I don't know, wholesome, grounding. I don't know why I associate those words with that.
Well, it feels really balanced. It brings balance into a life when we're so used to everything being instant. You want to buy something online and you want it now. And it doesn't always work like that. But also for me, if I'm working on a print that I'm really excited by, I'm really excited, I'm really immersed in it, it is this hyper focus, it's so exciting. And it does feel like there's little lights on me the whole time when I'm working. If I'm doing this and then I have to stop to post some orders, some of that energy goes out, it disperses somehow, so that when you get back to the block, when you've done the thing you have to do, it's a little less exciting. Like you've lost...
It's kind of chipped away at it
I lost a little bit of the power. Whereas if I can do a release once a month, I know it's every month, the first of the month from 10 a.m. So that's what I'm preparing for. at that point of the month, and I can be completely there for people to ask questions about any product they might like. I do limited edition prints, but I also do homewares as well. So if someone wants to ask a question or to know if that item's going to be in stock that month, I can be completely there for them. And I can be online to answer messages, and I can open my shop, and I can go and pack orders in a really lovely way, put an audiobook on, shut myself away for a couple of days, and just pack orders so that they feel nice, so it feels like I've really cared about them. I've given that time, interaction out to something that someone has been kind enough to buy off me. And then once that's done, I take them all to the post office together. We've got a really lovely little village post office. So I walk them down there in a bag. So I'm not doing anything digital with that. My sales are online, but I'm not having to digitally call in a courier or someone. I'm still going to our village post office.
Which, if you were sort of like posting stuff every day in drips and drabs,
it would take a lot of time out of your day.
Yeah, it would.
And that's also time. I mean, I am a parent of 3 children, although they're all a bit older now. There's only actually 2 at home at the moment. It means that time is taken from them, whereas
you're not fragmented, right?
Absolutely. I'm not snatching time from different places or trying to spread myself too thinly. I'm saying, this point of the month, I'm going to be packing orders, so that's what I'll be doing, and then I'll finish at this time, and then when the orders are all done, they'll go to the post office, and then the rest of the month is creative time. It's going out, it's getting inspired, it's going to different places, creating prints which feel genuinely good, and it does feel very wholesome. And none of that energy is dispersed. It's just doing that creative work, which means in terms of someone buying the work, they're getting the best work I can create. It's not diluted by all of the other things. It is the best possible work I can do, and that feels really great. It feels like I'm doing my best.
And as you say, it then also means when you're in sort of more sort of shop mode, you can be much more sort of thoughtful about, packaging and notes and whatever it is, and sort of be more present in that as well. So you've just mentioned you've got the limited edition prints.
Yes.
Do you then also have prints that are more sort of open edition?
No, I don't ever do open editions. They're always limited editions. Sometimes they're bigger or smaller. So if it's a big print, or if it's slightly more difficult to print for whatever reason, I'll make it a smaller edition.
Okay.
So some of the big prints I've made, there's only 7 in the world.
Oh, wow.
So if you're buying one of those prints, there are only 7 out there. Or if it's something that's easier to produce, it can be 200 in an edition, which means it can be slightly more affordable, so more people can buy it.
Yeah.
And it feels like it's giving a little bit to everyone.
Yeah.
But they're always limited editions. I never do open editions, and I don't do digital prints of my artwork. They're always the original hand printed.
And then you have a range of sort of homewares as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah, some really lovely, like, organic cotton tote bags and tea towels, which are printed near us, which is lovely. And it's a really lovely family business, so I can take the prints there as they are and talk to them about it, and they will work them into the artwork and get them printed. And they also employ lots of people locally, which feels great. And I get things like enamel mugs and teapots etched, and again that's a local company, and china mugs, which are all screen printed and then kiln fired, and they're made locally in Gwithian, and they're UK made mugs. So it feels like good products. Like I'm pleased
and everything's really intentional.
Yes.
The sourcing is thought about, and you know that you're contributing to your local
absolutely, the community, which is really important.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, the whole thing just feels really wholesome. It's so nice. It's just such a lovely way of just, doing business, I think. I wish more people, approach making money in that way. Because that's what it is, right? And actually, I think as well as an artist, it must be helpful to have that, to know that you're almost like getting paid at the beginning of the month.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yes. When you've got a family, we've all got costs in our lives. As an artist, we have to pay for things in the same way that everyone else does. And it's really nice to know that that money's there each month. And if it's not for some reason, that I have time in the month to go and think of some other way, do an event or something.
Yeah, yeah. So it brings you a sort of like financial rhythm in a way that not many artists actually have.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Thanks.
Going back to colour, you mentioned to me that you have synesthesia.
Yes.
Do you feel like that also impacts your relationship with colour a little bit?
Synesthesia for me is with heightened emotion.
Oh,
I see coloured patterns. So actually not having colour in my work is very calming. You know, it's the opposite of the heightened emotion, which feels good.
I see. So actually, if you have colour in your work, that probably means you were feeling like emotionally sort of more raw.
Stressed or something's happened or...
Oh, interesting. So for you, it's not a positive.
Well, it can be a positive. It can be a heightened good emotion.
Yeah.
But I think the clarity I like in my work of keeping it simple. Again, the balance of life, you know, looking at the shop reliefs and keeping that simple, you know, finding structures that make sense, feel good. And if everything feels calm and good, I think that's when you create your best work, or that's when I create my best work.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, synesthesia, just in case anybody doesn't know what it is, I mean, it's basically, it's like relationships between, it could be like sound creates colour, or it could even be the other way around,
lots of people
right?
have it with numbers, I think.
Yes, yeah, that's right, which seems, you kind of struggle to imagine what that would be like if you don't have it.
Yes.
But, and so for you, it's emotions generates sort of colour and pattern.
Yeah.
I mean, you have said that, you know, you're really inspired by nature. What sort of themes have you really seen sort of come back in your work?
It is that movement. It's the movement and elements of nature that I really love. So, you know, the most inspiring place would be somewhere with lots of space on top of a hill with lots of wind. I mean, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
And the sort of nature that comes from that environment, so moorland with the beautiful hawthorn trees that are swept to the side, that's always an exciting place to be.
Animals also feature, right?
Animals too. Mammals less than birds.
Okay.
But they do feature. It depends where I've been. It's always from something I've seen or somewhere I've been that's been exciting.
And even moth has featured on some of your work. I think we've got a little print.
She has. There's a moth print there that I did quite recently. I've done a couple of her over the years, but not loads.
Yeah.
She doesn't really like having her picture taken. I try to respect that.
Fair enough. And then you even have some of your prints featuring a jackdaw.
Yes, we did have a jackdaw that adopted us. It came to live with us. And yeah, it was around for a good while, which was so nice. And to live with a bird felt like such an honour. It was quite naughty. It would unpeg all of the prints, like hop along the line, and I'd try and catch it. It would hop onto the next and unpeg it and watch it fall to the ground. And I tried to catch it. It started this one up there that's ripped because it was pulling it off the wall. So very naughty, but full of character and life and funniness.
And same thing, like, was it sort of like undoing your work if you were like packing or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. As I would pack orders, it would start to pull the tape off and sort of bang holes into the boxes.
But it was sort of like free to go, or?
It was completely free to go.
I see.
It wasn't ever trapped in.
Yeah.
Its parents were still around and they would call from the wires outside and sometimes it would go out to them and did eventually go off with them and would come back for bits. And then I had sort of photographs from other people around the village saying, oh, your bird came to visit us today. And that was so nice. And then it just disappeared.
Oh, well, I hope it's living a happy life,
me
flying
too.
around.
Yeah, me too.
And in the meantime, it's inspired some of your work, which is a lovely memento to have.
Beautiful birds to print.
Yeah. And was it more happy to pose than moth, or?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
So good model as well. That's wonderful. I mean, as a kid, were you always creative?
I was always drawing. I was always out in nature. It was just, it was the way I existed. It felt very much like it was the only thing I could do was draw. So I did it over and over and over. I still haven't passed maths and English, and it's very, very unlikely that I will. But that's okay, I think. It is who I am, drawing.
Yeah.
It's totally part of my nature.
So did you go to art college then, or are you fully self-taught?
I did go to art college. I didn't pass GCSEs at school. So I did different access courses, and then
That's interesting, because I would have thought that would be a barrier to being able to study art at college, that they would want those qualifications.
I think I got there, I just took the long route.
Okay.
So between different access courses, which I didn't pass, and then A-levels, which I didn't pass. And then at sort of 20, I was given a really lovely opportunity by a friend's parents. They had an empty house that we could live in. So we lived there, which saved us money. And I worked for them and saved and drew and saved and drew and built up this big portfolio, which I then took to Falmouth Art College for the foundation interviews, and said, I haven't necessarily got these qualifications, but I can do this. And I had lots of work in different mediums that I'd been doing for the last couple of years, and wonderfully they gave me a place. So I did the foundation art, which doesn't exist now, sadly, and then went on to do the illustration degree, which I almost finished. And I'd got to the January when I should have graduated, that June or July, and I had my eldest child. And I meant to go back and finish it because I only had a couple of months left, but I had a baby and he was wonderful and I didn't. And I carried on making through all of it. And then when I was pregnant with my second child, so he was 16 months younger than the first, I started making clothing, which then other people wanted. So it was sort of appliquing textiles, which is actually a really similar process to print, looking at shape and form rather than line. And I did print at little bits through my life. I remember doing it, in GCSE art a little bit, and always loved that process, the puzzle, the consistency, or the reassurance of that process that each stage is going to produce this print. So when I'm drawing, I know what the next line's going to be. I know if I'm drawing a flower that it's going to look like that flower at the end. I know which line I need to put next to form the petals or the stem, or it's something I know. Whereas with print, you're removing it slightly, so you're putting your drawing into a process, which you're then carving and rolling ink over and printing it onto paper. And every time you do a print, it's slightly different, with the pressure or how you've rolled the ink or the colour of the ink. There's so many variables that you make something at the end that feels so exciting that it's gone through this whole journey. It just always really appealed to me.
So you kind of, even when you were working with textile, like that just kept
It was still a process that was there. And then I was given a really lovely opportunity when we moved back to Cornwall when my children were quite young. Because I was always drawn to nature, we had the Lost Gardens of Heligan quite close to where we were living at the time. And we met some lovely people who worked there who, one day when I was in there with my children, said, "So Lou, we've got this summer house that's empty. Would you like to use it as a studio?" Because I was looking for somewhere to work at the time.
Wow.
And I was like, well, yeah,
that
would be
so
great.
Benevolent.
That would be amazing. So I could drive my children to school in the morning in my little old Citroen Diane, and then drive up to Heligan before everyone else had got there, before the doors are open to the rest of the world, and walk around the paths and draw in the garden and say good morning to the robin and see which flowers were up that day. And I had a really beautiful little sketchbook diary at the time, which is a really formed part of my process now. I've always got a sketchbook, and that was part of it from that time. It was like a really lovely illustrated journal.
almost sounds like, you know, in the same way that some people might start the day with like meditation or yoga or something.
Yeah.
For you, it was like
it was
that
drawing,
walk around,
making sense of the
doing
world.
some drawings. Yeah,
It's like greeting friends, you know, and you see a paper white pop up through the ground at that time of year, and you remember seeing it last year. It is like greeting an old friend. It feels wonderfully consistent and reassuring. Did work for them while I was there, so making prints which turned into products for the shop, which meant I got that really lovely background grounding of working out which products sell and creating products and meeting the suppliers, which I still use now, you know, almost 20 years later.
and not having to really market yourself that much to begin with, right? Because you know exactly where the products are going,
they
and
were
you
all
know
going
that
to
there's
sell
visitors.
through the shop at Helligan, and
Yeah.
which was great. But I did go on to do lots of markets and exhibitions from there.
And sort of building up.
Yeah, and just built
from
that up
there.
over the years.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. I mean, I'm sure that it wasn't easy. Yeah, I'm sure it's
I think lots of
behind the
people
scenes.
think as an artist it's sort of a privileged career, that you come from some sort of wealth or supportive background, but that wasn't at all the case for me. It was very much hard graft over the years, but absolutely who I was. I haven't compromised on myself at all with my career, and that feels amazing.
I sort of feel like that sort of is reflected in the way that you've raised your kids around your work. You sort of said, you know, my kids have come along with me to markets and things that, like, they could set up my stall and run it without me there. They've grown up around that. You haven't sort of sugar-coated it in any way.
They've all been
They've
part
seen
of
you
it.
work hard.
Yeah, they've all been very much part of it. And I think it's really interesting to see your parents work and how they produce money that you live off.
Yeah,
I think
they
it
get a
was
full
also very
picture.
good for them socially, you know, to have to learn how to speak to people that they didn't know respectfully, you know, in a way that's part of your parents' job, but also part of your life. You know, it's very much woven into their life. It wasn't a special occasion for them. It was just, this is our life.
Yeah. And also, like, not that kids are there to represent you, but if they're behind your stand, they are representing you, they reflect on you.
And they always behaved really well, and I always really appreciated it.
Yeah. Talking about children, can we talk a little bit about the education system? Because I do feel like, you know, you sort of talked about your own experience with dyslexia and synesthesia and things like that, and how, like, in a way, the school environment wasn't always adapted to you, right? No. I was at an event recently where Rob Ryan was showing screen printing, and he said to me, everyone above a certain age said that they've tried screen printing before when they were at school, and everyone below a certain age was, like, completely new to it. Yeah. Which I thought was quite interesting.
It's been very much the same for me if I'm demonstrating somewhere. I get lots of people that come up and talk to me and say, well, we did lino printing when we were at school, but it was very much people who are 40 and up. That it's just like when times are difficult, I think, if people are struggling financially, the first thing you stop buying is art, or those extra things that make your life beautiful. Beautiful as well as useful, but beautiful. Those things stop. I think it's the same with the education system, that funding goes on arts first, because the emphasis is very much on maths and English. I don't believe that's helpful for everyone. You know, I feel like there's a lot of people that come out of the school system, like me, who are not necessarily traumatised by the school system, but if you are very dyslexic, or if you have some sort of neurodiversity, which means it's different for you, then you come out feeling like you're different. You know, we really need those people who make it to the top sets. That if you're in the top sets, you do very well, and you have the wonderful support of a top set. And we need those people. We need our accountants and teachers and all of those people who are academically good. We need those in our society, but we also need the poets and artists and carpenters and makers and horticulturists. We need that side of society to thrive as well, but also without the access that they need to the practical skills that they might be really good at. So lots of our crafts are dying out because people aren't introduced to these crafts. You know, it used to be very much that you would be in a community where there was the wheelwright down the road, or there was the blacksmith.
Yeah.
And you saw these trades. People could say, oh, actually, I quite like the look of being a blacksmith, and you could go in, do an apprenticeship and become a blacksmith. From my experience as being someone that's very dyslexic, I left school and didn't do very well, so I had to do the really sort of long route to get to where I wanted to be. And I did get to where I wanted to be because I'd seen it. I grew up in a place that was very creative. There were lots of artists, and I could see that people could make a living from being an artist. It was something I knew I could go to. It was a goal. You imagine if people went into school and they were tested on maybe learning styles rather than abilities to pass an exam. So maybe the people that are very academic would be handed that curriculum, and then maybe someone who was much more practically minded and learnt in a sort of more tactile way followed a different curriculum. And then when you have a careers fair, you have those tables where there's the sixth form college that you can go on to next, or the university, and there's, you know, the army, the armed forces have stands. Imagine if there was kind of government funded
Like
crafts stand where someone was demonstrating, you know, there could be someone doing plaster moulds or stone carving, you know, inviting different craftspeople that we value, that we genuinely value in our society. Demonstrating these skills that people could then see and think, actually, I'd love to do that. That would be amazing. And they could go on and do an apprenticeship with a master craftsperson, which I was asked recently on a form, have you ever worked, you know, it was part of my education, time with a master craftsperson. And there was something in me that felt like I'd lost something. Like, wouldn't that have been wonderful to work with a master craftsperson?
Gosh, yeah.
To have that time. It would be so valuable. And if that was something that was normalised.
But I see you as a master craftsperson.
I know, but I'm not here training somebody else. You know, you would need to be funded to do that. And I don't think that's something we yet value or value at this moment in time. I think we used to. And I have huge hopes that we will again in the future.
Yeah, because it's one of these things of like, you might get to that point once you've sort of paid off your mortgage and the kids have gone home and you have a bit less pressure financially.
And you have time.
But otherwise, it's like you can't. No. And even then, it would still be a stretch, right? Yeah. Because then you're having to sustain somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how do you pay them? How do you pay yourself whilst you're teaching them and you're not able to make things to sell, etc.? Yes. I mean, it's just... Well, I mean, part of this channel is hopefully, you know...
we can reform the education system.
Yeah. Well, it might, you know, land on the homepage of someone who's doing their GCSE or something like that, and they might think, oh, actually, I didn't realise, you know, I knew this artist and I knew their work, maybe, but maybe I didn't realise I could make a career out of it. So now that you're maker, you know, is there anything that you think, oh gosh, I would have loved to try this if I'd sort of seen this earlier?
I mean, loads, but... Yeah. I've often thought over the years, I mean, it's not something I knew when I was younger that was a thing, but now I spend lots of time in beautiful houses and sort of National Trust properties and the lovely Landmark Trust. I would love to retrain to do, you know, like the fine detail woodwork. So when you see like wooden scrolls on beams or green men or, you know, gargoyles and funny faces and leaves, I would love to do that. How amazing would that be to go up scaffoldings and sort of fix these beautiful carved wood? That's what I would do.
City and Guilds of London Art School, we have a short course 1 week every summer.
Okay.
So maybe that's something
that's
sort
my
of
future.
think. Yeah,
okay,
once the kids have left school to sort of think.
Great.
That can be a thing too.
Fine. I do think they're all transferable skills.
Yeah. I reckon you'd be really good at it because like all the carvers I've interviewed, they've all said that's like a lot of it is like almost like a 3D drawing.
Yeah.
I hope you get to try it at some point. That would be really cool to see. I mean, that's the sort of thing with making as well, it's a very supportive kind of environment, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we're really lucky. I'm in a collective, the Working Hand Collective, which our sort of core makers are me as a printmaker, a basket maker, a wood turner and a leather worker. And we do events together. In the future, we want to go and do it and bring other people in with us. So go to different places across the country and get other makers together, do sort of craft camps and, just support each other as makers. We're all earning a living from our niche crafts, and if we can support each other, then it's a really beautiful thing.
Would that be your sort of, not dream commission, but your dream project then, to sort of go around the country, sort of?
Yeah, absolutely. My plan, when my children have all gone and they're all happy, is to do a sort of residency project where I go around the country and sort of, maybe in my van or maybe on a train. I have a van which is set out as a whole studio. I can do prints from beginning to end in my van, which is so nice.
So it would be you and Moff going
So it'd be me and
Moff
in our van driving around, And
can I come?
Yeah, absolutely. You can come and hang out with us. And drive to a place, maybe somewhere that someone's recommended. So I'm really conscious that a lot of work now is from social media. And I've also got a really great community on social media. So Instagram, people send me lovely messages all the time. We kind of have chats. It's really nice. And what if I were to take my work to these people? So instead of it just being online, to say, okay, this person that I follow is in Shetland, for example. So I'm going to go to Shetland and I'm going to work there as a residency, staying somewhere beautiful for 3 weeks, maybe a month, and then produce a body of work
that's specific to that area.
That's specific to that area. So using things from that area, so maybe even making inks with the earth pigments from that area, or colouring the prints with paints that I've made from, the botanicals in that area. And then putting on a little show, like a little exhibition in their village hall. I'm not thinking cities here. I'm not a city girl, but small village communities, and doing an exhibition and inviting people to come.
Yeah.
And just like the once a month shop opening online, where you invite people to come, I can invite people to come in real life in different places that are close to them, and then move on to the next place and do that and sort of stitch it together around the country.
That sounds wonderful. One thing that I did want to talk about as well was an early sort of aha moment that you had when you were on the Falmouth course.
Yeah, I self-supported when I was at university. And I didn't have a lot of money. I had 2 jobs. I was working in pubs and, doing artwork in the day. And it was quite hard. So the 3rd year trip came up, which was to go to New York. And I just couldn't afford to go. And it felt like really missing out on a beautiful opportunity, because everyone was going to talk to agents and talk about what their future career was going to be. So there was a real sense of loss for me that I absolutely couldn't go on this trip.
Yeah.
And the bonding that would happen from that, well, that wasn't going to happen. So I knew of someone who had a design agency in London who said I could go and do a week with them. So I went to London, which felt like quite a big thing for me anyway. And I spent a week there. And while I was there, always loving print, I went to the William Morris Gallery in Walthamstow, and I was looking around the prints on the walls, thinking how amazing it was, but seeing that difference of wealth at the time, as wonderful as William Morris was with the arts and crafts movement, it was still created for an audience of wealth. The wallpaper that he made is incredible, but it was only very wealthy people that could afford it. And I was really conscious of that as I was walking around as this person who couldn't afford this and not coming from a background of privilege. And I did have a heaviness of heart, thinking, how am I ever going to achieve what I would like to achieve, make a living from this as an artist? And I couldn't see how that was possible. And I went back and I didn't finish my degree. And I guess I lost a bit of energy as well as having a child. I lost a little bit of hope that was something for me. But then over the years I did work, and I worked very hard. I've always been a grafter. And always wanted to do well despite it. So I carried on doing artwork, and then when my second child was 4 months old, I registered as self-employed, and I did my own practice, and it evolved over the years, and I built it up over the years. And it was before the COVID pandemic, and I had an email from Morris & Co inviting me to come and teach workshops in London, which was just like, really? This is incredible. And it felt like such an exciting moment in going to Chelsea Harbour with my little suitcase full of printing tools and to teach these people. And I did a little bit more work with them over the next couple of years. And I just felt like if I could go back to my 21, 22-year-old self, maybe a bit older than that, 23, and say, you know, it's going to be okay. It would feel like such a hug from the universe to know that it will be all right. You know, it was just such a lovely moment of, this has been good.
Yeah.
This career has been a career, and it's still something I continue to build on. I can't imagine ever retiring. You know, This isn't work in the sense of work being something you don't want to do.
Yeah.
This is very much
part of you.
Part of me.
Yeah.
And will continue to be.
And actually sort of tying in with that, with Morris & Co., the other sort of dream projects you said would be...
We talked a bit earlier about doing things like wallpaper. It's not something I've produced as part of my work yet, but it was something that I would love to do. Could you imagine how great that would be? I have testers around, so in the studio and in my home I have sort of single drops of wallpaper that I've printed for fun.
Yeah.
Just for the fun of it, whilst thinking how lovely that would be to do as a product one day.
Yeah, I can imagine a collaboration, the thing with dropping hints.
Yeah, anyone. Wallpaper collaborations would be great.
But yeah, I can certainly, like looking at the testers and things, I can just imagine. I mean, I've loved your work for many years now, so I can definitely imagine that I'd want a whole room of it, and I'd be quite happy with that. Yeah. So there you go, sign me up, customer number one. Yeah, was there anything else that we haven't talked about? No, I feel like we've been pretty thorough. Yeah. Great. Well, we'll take the hint from Moth that it's time to get up and
time to move around. Maybe do some printing.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much for making time for this. It's wonderful. Linked to Lou's website below, as well as any of the other things that we mentioned over the course of the conversation. If you have any questions for her or generally about printmaking and lino cutting, please leave them below. Thank you for watching. It means a lot, especially as at the moment this channel is entirely self-funded. So please spread the word. Like, share and subscribe. See you next week.
And selling it.
Oh my God. Seriously. See what I mean? It's so annoying. It just happens in the middle of a sentence. So what to read the last sentence?